Good evening, y'all. It is Thursday, July 16th. I almost screwed it up again. Come on! And these are some of the headlines on bizarrebus.com. Virus data has already disappeared after administration shifted control from CDC to White House. That's a problem, probably. Eviction looms for millions. In Utah, debate stirs over Estonian radioactive waste. Fort Hood soldier decapitates another. His girlfriend is now facing trial after he killed himself. And Mike Tyson will fight a shark as part of Shark Week 2020. We're going to talk about all these topics. There are many more, but these are all sourced and listed under the headlines at bizarrebus.com. Not sure what's going on, but we're going to get into it. Coronavirus data has already disappeared after the president's administration shifted control of the numbers from the CDC. Key points here are, since the pandemic began, the CDC has regularly published data on availability of hospital beds and intensive care units across the country. But Ryan Panchadaram, some dude named Ryan, who helps run a data tracking site called COVID Exit Strategy, said that when he tried to collect the data from the CDC on Tuesday, it had disappeared. When reached for comment Thursday by CNBC, HHS spokesperson Michael Caputa said in a statement that the CDC was directed to make the data available again. Sounds fishy. Previously, public data has already disappeared from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention website after the Trump administration quietly shifted control of the information from the Department of Health and Human Services. Since the pandemic began, the CDC regularly published data on availability of hospital beds and intensive care units across the country. Ryan, that dude's whose last name I can't pronounce, said we were surprised because the modules that we normally go to were empty. The data wasn't available and not there, and there was no warning. And that's exactly what happened to the spreadsheet that I was talking about that proves that Soros sent funds to the BLM like the last 3 years or longer. Just the cells were totally empty. Anyway, CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield told reporters on a conference call Wednesday that states were told to stop sending hospital information to the National Healthcare Safety Network site, the CDC's system for gathering data, beginning Wednesday. Instead, all data will now be reported through HHS reporting portal, officials said, adding that the decision was made to streamline data reporting and to provide HHS officials with real-time data. Public health specialists and former health officials acknowledged that the CDC's data reporting infrastructure was limited and said it needed to be overhauled to meet demands of the COVID pandemic. However, they expressed concern in interviews with CNBC that the change could lead to less transparent data, and I agree with that. I also agree that the CDC needs an overhaul. Absolutely. And if they're expressing that, then they really freaking need an overhaul. When reached for comment Thursday by CNBC, HHS spokesman Michael Caputa said in a statement that the CDC was directed to make the data available again in the future. HHS will provide more powerful insights. Yes, HHS is committed to being transparent with the American public about the information it is collecting on the coronavirus. Therefore, HHS has directed the CDC to reestablish the coronavirus dashboards it withdrew from the public on Wednesday. If they want to keep their jobs, they got to do what HHS is telling them to do. That's the bottom line. And that's not right. Our medical should not be overseen by government. Those are two different things, I think. And that's what you get when there's too many chiefs in a situation. Representative of the CDC did not immediately respond to CNBC's request for comment. Later in the day, the CDC did restore the site's previous dashboards, with the data through Tuesday saying this file will not be updated after July 14th, 2020, includes data from April 1st to July 14th. So they're doing exactly what they're told to do, dude. The CDC's webpage for data on available hospital and ICU beds has added a note that reads, data displayed on this page was submitted directly to CDC's National Healthcare Safety Network, or NHSN. It does not include data submitted to other entities contracted by or within the federal government. We don't have this critical indicator anymore, Ryan said. The intent of just switching the data streams towards HHS, that's fine, but you've got to keep the data that you're sharing publicly still available and up to date. I agree entirely. We need total transparency here, people. Even if there are mistakes, we need total transparency and correction in those mistakes. Ryan said that he and his team, which include researchers from Duke, Center for Health Policy, and from Resolve to Save Lives, a public health initiative led by former CDC Director Dr. Tom Frieden, have been tracking the data since April. Ryan thinks of the project as something of a progress bar as they grade different states on overall progress they've made in fighting the pestilence. Available hospital beds and ICU capacity is a key indicator they use to access state performance, he added. And the reason I use pestilence instead of COVID-19 or novel coronavirus, it's just, I'm used to saying pestilence, so I apologize. I do replace that with the word pestilence. It's just easier for me to say than continuing to say COVID-19 or novel coronavirus. Ryan says it's disappointing. It happened a lot quicker than we expected. The picture that we're presenting to the world is incomplete. Other coronavirus researchers and public health specialists expressed concern because the policy change was announced so suddenly in the midst of a public health crisis that appears to be worsening. That would be correct, Ryan. Dr. Jennifer Nuzos, an epidemiologist at Johns Hopkins University, which came up with the crazy thing that they report numbers to just overnight, just came out of nowhere right after Event 201, or they used it during Event 201. They just happened to have it available. Probably part of this whole freaking thing. Sorry, I went on a little rant there. Which one runs one of the most this is the freaking Johns Hopkins, which runs one of the most popular third-party coronavirus data dashboards that I just told you about. Said the policy change won't impact the Hopkins site because they've managed to source their data directly from states. She added, however, that the policy change raises questions about the transparency of the data and the role of CDC in the ongoing U.S. response. I would love to hear an explanation on that dashboard and how they came up with it cut so quick and how long it took to build and what they were building it for. Was it initially for Event 201 only? And they're like, we now have a pandemic we can use it for. Yeah. What worries me is that when we seem to be pushing rather suddenly in the midst of what feels like a very urgent time in terms of surging cases that we're seeing across the country, this Jennifer from Johns Hopkins told CNBC, the question is, what are we going to lose in this transition? And in particular, at a moment where we really don't want to lose any ability to understand what's happening in hospitals. Jennifer expressed concern that the administration didn't appear to fully plan out how the transition in data reporting would work and didn't give hospitals or researchers a warning about the change or how it might affect them. I think it's reasonable to worry that it could lead to erosion of capacities at a moment where we very much can't afford to lose any abilities at this point, she said. I don't fully understand how it's going to work. That in of itself is problematic. And then some Dr. Jen Cates, Senior VP and Director of Global Health and HIV Policy at the Kaiser Family Foundation, echoed Jennifer's concerns about the speed with which the decision had become policy. I think we all feel that way. It's just really odd that they would just do that like overnight. Because are they hiding numbers? Do they want to hide them? Is this due to the political climate? The president and his administration have come under fire during the pandemic from critics who say the White House is undermining the country's public health officials, and they are. Last week, Trump criticized the CDC guidelines on reopening schools as too tough and expensive. He also, and the leader at CDC was like, yeah, we probably shouldn't open school. And he was like, well, then we won't fund schools if they don't open. And he's like, oh, well, I guess we're opening schools. Like, he wants to keep his job, so he's full of shit. But states are ultimately up in that decision. It's up to them, each state. The thing is, they won't get funding if they're not opening the schools. So I think there's like a minimum that they have to be open to be eligible for funding. I'm telling y'all need to get community schools back together, just your little block. Find a teacher, buy a house to do it in. I don't know. Rent a church out to do it in. There has to be a way to do this that the government doesn't have control over your children's education and their health, for God's sake. I wouldn't send my kids back to school right now, and I have bizarre teacher is, I believe, of the same feeling. Or at least they should be homeschooled at this point. It's a cesspool of germs in schools. There's been concerns raised about when the CDC has the leeway to offer its advice as a public health agency, really based on the evidence and the data, and there's been several examples where we're not clear that that's been the case, that Kate said. I think that it is a concern that many have. Is there any political significance to this change? I think we all feel that way. So I'm sure there will be more on this subject. But anyway, you can read this for yourself. There is a video. I will link it on bizarrebus.com. Meanwhile, a torrent of evictions loom in the coming months for millions of Americans who've been unable to pay the rent during the pandemic. Housing researchers and activists are warning that millions of people risk becoming homeless if the government doesn't extend measures, both federally and locally, that were put in place during the pandemic to protect renters. According to the latest weekly Census Bureau data, 11.6 million people live in households that missed their mortgage or rent last month. More than 22 million Americans also have no or only slight confidence that they'll be able to make next month's payment. People who have largely been able to survive the initial months of the pandemic due to the eviction moratoriums put in place in most states, as well as unemployment federal relief checks. Those measures, however, have had a cascading effect within the housing market as landlords who cannot collect rent struggle to cover their own bills. I am not sure why, instead of sending out the $1,200 to people, they didn't agree to pay landlords and mortgage companies for people while this was going on, since they are the ones that forced a shutdown. Just saying. As part of a $2 trillion coronavirus aid package, Congress put a 120-day nationwide eviction moratorium on certain rentals. It meant that renters who live in a federally subsidized building or one with a federally backed mortgage could not be evicted through July 25th. Well, that's not helping anybody else. Not everybody lives in subsidized housing. Landlords also could not charge fees or penalties for non-payment during this time as well. About 1/3 of renters across the country were covered by this federal moratorium. Meanwhile, various other state and citywide eviction moratoriums were put in place to protect other renters, not in every city. They too are now expiring and have already run out. While the rules vary in different states, rent is not canceled under the moratoriums and people still have to pay. Many local moratoriums have rules in place that mean landlords cannot charge late fees for missed payments. So when are all the payments due? That's the question. That'd be my question. When the moratoriums expire, landlords can start evicting tenants who have not paid or owe rent. In some states like Nevada, the moratorium also applies to commercial tenants. States from Nevada to Virginia have recently lifted or are about to end moratoriums on rent payments and foreclosures designed to get people through the pandemic and its economic fallout. Pennsylvania recently announced it will extend its moratorium to the end of August, while Boston will keep its ban on most public housing evictions until the end of the year. Arizona's 120-day order ends July 22nd. Wow. Do you know how many freaking homeless people there are going to be? I mean, just imagine, like, you really don't have anywhere else to go, dude. You're out. That's it. And once they start the eviction process, you can't pay the rent. They won't accept it. And then once you're evicted, you can't even hardly get another apartment due to evictions unless you go to, subsidized housing. And they base that on your income. So if you make too much money, you're out. It's a whole freaking problem. Housing advocacy groups in Arizona have joined lawmakers in lobbying Governor Doug Ducey to extend his coronavirus-related moratorium on evictions and allow authorities to start removing hundreds of renters in the state that become a national hotspot for infections. Advocates in Arizona also say it's too early to end the ban because most of the government money set aside to help pay rents and mortgages still hasn't been doled out. A report released earlier this month revealed that nearly 1/3 of American families were unable to make full payments for July. The survey by Apartment List, an online rental platform, found that 32% of U.S. households did not make their full payments on time this month. It marked the fourth month in a row that a historically high number of households were unable to make the payments on time and in full, up from 30% in June and 24% in April. And all of these empty places will just become, they won't stay empty. People will break into them and stay there. Then you've got other issues. About 19% of survey respondents said they made no payment at all during the first week of the month, and 13% paid only a portion of their rent and mortgage. In June, about 90% of households were able to pay some or all of their payments, but a large sum of those payments appeared to have been made at the end of the month. With late fees added, the struggle to make payments is becoming a vicious cycle that is likely to persist as the pandemic continues to surge. Delayed payments in 1 month are a strong predecessor for missed payments in the next, noting that 70% of households who were late in May were also late in June. Dude, that is so messed up. A different report found that 1 in 4 tenants in New York City hadn't paid rent at all since March, when the pandemic began. The Community Housing Improvement Program, a trade association for owners of rent-stabilized properties, estimates that 25% of the 5.4 million people renting in the city had not made a payment in 4 months. How can they? They've been totally shut down. I mean, unless you're working from home, like I've been lucky enough to be able to do that, but not everybody can do that. A New York state law that prohibits landlords from evicting tenants who are facing financial hardships as a result of the pandemic has had a cascading effect within the housing market as landlords who aren't bringing in rent struggle to cover their own bills, and the city braces for millions of dollars in delinquent property taxes. In addition, those landlords can't make payments on the buildings that they own. They don't outright, a lot of these people don't outright own those buildings. They have to make payments on them. They use the rent to do that. A New York state law that prohibits landlords from, a June survey by CHIP found that 39% of building owners could only make a partial property tax payment for July, while 6% were unable to pay any at all. Also weighing on Americans trying to make rent is the fact that the extra $600 in federal unemployment benefits cease at the end of July. Another 1.3 million Americans filed new claims for unemployment last week, bringing the total number of people thrown out of work during the pestilence, nearly to 50 million. Figures released by the Labor Department on Thursday show that weekly claims have steadily been dropping but remain at a historically high level that indicates many companies are still cutting jobs. They are. They haven't recovered either. There's no agreement yet between the White House and Congress on a second federal relief package. Dems are pushing to provide more money to prevent evictions. And the Dem bill would extend federal eviction moratorium through March 2021. It doesn't mention what the Republicans are trying to do, of course. Not shocking there. So that's that with that story. And God bless anyone who has the bills and they're trying to make the rent or the car payment or the insurance payment. All of these things, it's just a hardship for everybody, let alone putting food on the table. I'm going to link this at bizarrebus.com. Let's take a quick break, and we wanted to show you the support page at bizarrebus.com, where you can just go to bizarrebus.com and click on support us. You can choose t-shirts, anything you've seen in the videos we try to list. There's 5 different ways that you can try to support us. You can use Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, Bitcoin. You can just send a straight Zelle request if you want, Venmo. You can choose to purchase a mask, any of the t-shirts. We got Alien Lives Matter, Earth Life Matters, Black Hole Eats Matters, Black Holes Eat Matter. We've got a lot of different things you can do to support us. We would certainly appreciate it if you feel that we deserve that. Thank you so much. In southeast Utah, nerves are frayed over a pile of radioactive material that's parked 5,000 miles away in Estonia. I think it's part of Russia. Regulators are weighing whether a local uranium company can import the material for processing at a mill near the border of a Native American reservation. Utah officials have no deadline for making their decision on the license approval and will do so after thoroughly reviewing the high volume of public comments, said Jared, a spokesman for the state's Department of Environmental Quality. For Energy Fuels Inc., the shipment represents an economic lifeline after the company posted an operating loss of $7.8 million for the first quarter. Its president in March described the U.S. uranium industry as being on the cusp of complete collapse. Dude. But for the Mountain Ute tribe, UTE, I apologize if I mispronounced that, living near the facility, the only operational uranium mill in the United States, the proposal has stoked fears that tribal land will become a dumping ground for global radioactive waste. That's exactly how things happen. They have every right to be pissed or concerned. Both the White Mesa Mill and the tribal reservation are in San Juan County, Utah's poorest. The tribe, along with environmentalists, argue that processing the radioactive byproduct would mark a dangerous extension of the mill's operations. The mill, built in '79, was only meant to process conventional uranium ores from the Colorado Plateau for up to 20 years, the tribe said. The Navajo Utah Commission and Navajo Nation have also said that the company's application, they also want the company's application to be rejected. Sorry, there was a typo in there and I was trying to fix it in my head. The state of Utah must recognize and acknowledge the reality that the mill is far past its design life and no longer a conventional uranium mill, but instead a radioactive waste dump sinking to operate for decades, if not a millennium. The Mountain Ute tribe said in a document submitted to the state on Friday, the deadline for public comments I guess it's Friday. The 660 tons of powdered material in question now sit in 2,000 drums at a plant on the Estonian coast near the Russian border. Would be Energy Fuels' first ever radioactive import from outside North America. The powder is a byproduct from tantalum and niobium mining by Estonian company Silmet, which contains uranium. But it cannot stay with Estonia, where there is no licensed facility for reprocessing radioactive material. Sounds like Russia's freaking problem. Why are you bringing that shit here? I'm going with hell no, man. Energy Fuels says there's enough uranium in that byproduct that it's worth processing. Opponents say Energy Fuels is simply taking in waste which would be stored on site. They just want a paycheck. That's what I'm thinking. These feeds are important to the continued economic viability of the mill, particularly given the current state of the uranium market. Paul Goranson, Chief Operating Officer of Energy Fuels, said in an email. He said business from the shipment would help the company keep its 70 workers employed. It's not worth it, dude. Energy Fuels anticipates demand for domestic uranium could rise after the Trump administration in April proposed a $1.5 billion federal uranium reserve that would purchase uranium from domestic producers. Such a reserve, however, would need congressional approval, a major hurdle. The reserve was one of the main proposals to come from a federal nuclear fuel working group aimed at reviving the U.S.'s uranium and nuclear industry. The United States currently imports over 90% of its uranium from abroad for its reactors. Dude. So now they're making you like, well, we should import it so we don't have to import it from other people. The company is also asked to expand its capacity from 5,000 to 10,000 cubic yards site per year so it can accept more alternate feed that is of significant value beyond the Estonian shipment. In the meantime, the San Juan County Commission has joined in resisting the licensing approval. In comments to regulators this month, it said it respects Energy Fuels as a local employer, but it's concerned about the long-term impact of future imports of radioactive waste without new regulation or oversight, especially as residents are still dealing with the legacy of other unfinished mine cleanups and water contamination from existing operations. It's time the state of Utah treat areas near Native American communities with equal consideration as you would a metropolitan area and deny the amendments and modifications to the permit proposal, said the commissioner, a member of the Navajo Nation. The residents of San Juan County deserve nothing less and certainly do not need to continue to be the world's dumping ground for hazardous material. Dude, I probably would agree with that. I mean, do we really need nuclear shit? It's all a problem. We need to go towards more solar stuff, dude. The sun is free. You know, I don't even know why stuff costs so much, man. It's really not that much. People just overcharge for everything. In any event, I know nothing about nuclear material and not nearly as much about solar power as I ought to, so if I sound inadequate in this area, I am. Anyway, I will link this at bizarrebus.com. This wasn't in the news as much as it should have been. A lawyer for slain soldier Vanessa Gillen's family said she hopes the woman is charged in connection with her death and will face terrorism charges because she did exactly what a particular group in Afghanistan would do to the young soldier's body. Cecily Aguilar, 22, is accused of helping her boyfriend, soldier Aaron Robinson, to dismember and dispose of Gillen's body after Robinson beat her to death with a hammer inside Fort Hood's armory room. Aguilar has pleaded not guilty. Such a fine gentleman. And his stupid girlfriend helped him out. Why, dude? No, homie, you are on your own. I ain't going to jail for your dumb ass. She did exactly how this organization over in Afghanistan would treat one of our soldiers. I can't mention the name because I can get banned. So, Gullen family attorney Natalie Quaham claimed Tuesday when she announced that the family hoped Aguilar would be charged with terrorism. They decapitate our soldiers. They dismember them. They light them on fire. She did it exactly to Vanessa, who is a U.S. soldier, and I want her to be treated as the same way and punished as a terrorist because she is. So this was just brushed across the mainstream media ever so lightly. They don't want you to know. During a hearing at the Waco, Texas County Courthouse, U.S. Attorney Mark Fraser said that Aguilar deleted her Google account while in jail in an attempt to hide incriminating evidence, according to Crime Online. She also contacted someone via phone from jail and asked them to delete her Facebook account. In another phone call from jail, Aguilar reportedly told someone she wanted to flee the country using a $5,000 credit card. You ain't going too far on that. Also on Tuesday, Aguilar pleaded not guilty to 3 conspiracy to tamper with evidence charges. The judge ordered her held without bail until trial, according to Crime Online. If convicted, Aguilar faces 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Gwilyn, 20, was last seen alive at the Fort Hood military base in Texas on April 22nd. Investigators believe that Robinson bludgeoned her to death in the armory room that day and then used a pelican case to remove the body from the base. So what did she do? Why did he do that? What'd she know? Then he allegedly drove to the Leon River area, about 25 miles from the Fort Hood base, where he contacted Aguilar and asked her to help him dispose of the body. And she did it like an idiot. Robinson and Aguilar then allegedly drove together to the Leon River and used a machete to hack Gillen's body up, according to the affidavit. They later returned to attempt to burn and encase parts of Gillen's body in cement to get rid of evidence. Been watching too many crime shows. That shit doesn't work, dude. When human remains were found in the area on June 30th, authorities attempted to contact Robinson, who had been a suspect. However, the soldier shot himself in the head before he could be taken in for questioning because he's a freaking weak-ass individual that apparently can't face what he did. He died at the scene. Motive for the killing has yet to be determined, but there are reports that Gillen saw photos of Robinson on Robinson's phone and confronted him about having an affair with someone married to a former soldier. Who cares? Aguilar is the estranged wife of former soldier Keon Aguilar, according to Crime Online. Keon reportedly attended the Tuesday hearing. Such a waste of life. And, you really don't think, somebody would kill you over photos. What the fuck kind of photos were they, man? That's what I want to know. They need to get that dude's phone and cloud account. Anyway, just wanted you to be aware of what's happening out here. I'm going to link that at bizarrebus.com. And finally, tonight, Mike Tyson is preparing for the fight of his life. Next month, Mike Tyson will go toe-to-toe with a shark for Discovery's Shark Week 2020. This ought to be interesting the way 2020's been going, dude. I'm not sure I'd do it if I was him. You might not come out. And he's doing it because apparently he has nothing else better to do. We may not have live sports quite yet, but at least we have the Tyson versus Jaws Rumble on the Reef special. Shark Week is no stranger to underwater brawls, but given Tyson's background, he's likely better equipped to handle his opponent than previous competitors, Michael Phelps. And that makes for some must-see TV when Tyson versus Jaws. How do I watch the Tyson versus Jaws battle on Shark Week? Here's everything you need to know. Probably got to have cable, which I don't have. To kick off Shark Week 2020, Mike Tyson will be getting into the cage with a live shark in the name of research. Discovery says Tyson and the shark will go head-to-head as famed ring announcer Michael Buffer calls the matchup awesome. Hopefully from a safe distance away. In a statement, Tyson reveals that he had a fear of getting back into the ring at 54 years old, but Tyson versus Jaws Rumble on the Reef matchup helped him to overcome that aversion. I learned from this experience doing Shark Week that whatever intimidates me, I'm still able to set step up to the challenge and overcome anything, he says. When is it? August 9th on Discovery. How to stream Mike Tyson versus Shark Week. If you have a valid cable login, you can watch Mike Tyson Shark Week fight live on Discovery Channel via the Discovery Go app, or you can stream it through Discovery Go. You can also catch it on Hulu, Live TV, Fubo TV, Philo, and YouTube TV, all of which offer Discovery Channel Shark Week. You can probably catch it after it's live streaming on YouTube somewhere or somewhere else for free. Shark Week begins Sunday 9th and continues through Sunday, August 16th. All right. Sounds interesting. I hope that, I don't know what kind of battle this is, but they're in water, so the shark has the upper hand. I don't know if he's racing it or what's going on. I just hope that, I can't imagine they would put the shark in any danger. As long as he doesn't take to biting the shark, should be okay, you know. All right, well, that's it for tonight. I hope you enjoyed tonight's news, and I will either see you Friday or Monday. I might have a family thing Friday, so I'm not sure yet. But anyway, if I don't see you, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk soon.